We are back in session. Do I need a roll call to adjourn from
I think you need a
executive session?
motion.
I need a motion to
I
adjourn.
move that we adjourn from executive session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I need a roll call, please. I'm sorry.
Commissioner Vetter,
Aye.
Commissioner Simmons,
Aye.
Mayor Lee,
Aye.
Commissioner Homan,
Aye.
Commissioner DeBras.
Aye.
Next on our agenda is a work session for the rules of the commission.
Commissioners, this is an item that we've discussed for a little bit of time here. What I did is I put a draft together of procedural rules and rules of conduct for city commission meetings. I sent them out to you, and I'm asking you for your comments on them. If you'd like, I can go over them very quickly.
Go right ahead.
Okay. So we start off with the business. Basically, the new rules would set up a business agenda and then a public forum agenda or public comment agenda. And the business agenda, it starts off with the meeting will be called to order. The Pledge of Allegiance will be called, a roll call will be called. And then the commissioners would actually add or remove items from a business agenda and then approve an agenda once it is established. That's never really occurred in our commission. Most places that I've had meetings have done that. And I think it's probably a good practice for the commission to do that in the future. After the approval, the commission will vote to approve the prior minutes. Then the next item that I have is Section 4 of the Piqua City Charter establishes that all citizens of the city of Piqua shall have the right to be heard on ordinance and resolutions. After the establishment of the agenda, the commission shall permit public comment by the citizens of Piqua on approved agenda items. And this would be only for agenda items. It would allow it before the item is called. It would be at the beginning of the meeting. And then any persons providing public comment would provide his or her name or street address. And the reason for doing that is to make sure that they are a citizen of the Piqua or in the next section establishes that non-citizens would be allowed to participate also in public comment if the ordinance or resolution made part of the agenda affects their business located within the city of Piqua or utility services. By stating their name and street address, it would allow you to determine whether or not the business or they lived inside the city of Piqua or had an interest in the item that was provided in the agenda. Public comment would be limited for a period of 5 minutes on resolutions and ordinances. No one would be permitted to comment twice, and that the total public comment would be limited to 30 minutes in total. Once public comment is completed, the city commission then would deliberate on ordinances and resolutions. Votes on ordinance would be recorded by roll call, and votes on resolutions could be by voice vote unless a commissioner wished to have the resolution to have a roll call on the resolution. During the business agenda, only persons approved by the city manager would make presentations on behalf of the city. This may sound kind of strange, but it's an important item because if you don't limit and you don't allow the city manager to limit who can speak in the business sessions, you could open it up to all sorts of organizations and some that you may not want to speak during the business agenda items. After the completion of the business agenda, the mayor may or may not permit commissioners to address the community for the good of the city. I put may or may not here is because commissioners would change over time. I know our policy here is that commissioners all make comments, but mayors in the future, commissions in the future may not want to do that, and that's why I left it may or may not. Afterwards, the commissioners will adjourn the business meeting of the commission, and city staff may be excused. At that point, the mayor at his discretion, or the commission at their discretion, could commence a non-agenda public comment period. The reason why I put it at your discretion is because there may be meetings that go extremely long. It might be 10 o'clock and you guys may all say, hey, we're tired tonight, we want to go home, or we just don't want it, or we have something we don't want to have a non-agenda public comment. If it's really up to the commission to determine whether or not they wish to go forward at that time. I have the non-public comment period shall be for no longer than 60 minutes. Comments public shall be addressed to the commission and the mayor and shall be limited to 5 minutes per person. Under no circumstances should commission or mayor, and this applies for the business part, interrupt anybody in the 5-minute period. Now, we've had a pattern of people asking the commission to answer questions in the past. My suggestion is the commission just, if they would take the questions, if they wish to answer them at the end of the 5-minute period, they can, or they can say, thank you, we hear your comments, and seek to answer those questions at another time if they would desire. All comments shall be business related to business activities, the city business or activities. We've had some people come up here and they're discussing what's on their Facebook time. This is not really the appropriate forum for that. We should really should be limiting any comments to matters that affect the city of Piqua, not them personally. Any person, the clerk of commission will not be under any obligation to keep minutes during the non-agenda public comment session. Public comment would only be afforded to persons who live within the city of Piqua city limits. Any persons providing public comment will provide their name and street address prior to making comments. Upon the expiration of 60 minutes or upon the last person wishing to make public comment, whichever is earlier, the non-agenda public comment session shall end. And then in the last page that I have here is the rules of conduct. They're pretty, went through court cases to get all of these. Basically, these are the things that are prohibited in our meetings and some other additional rules. I've seen comments, physically threatening remarks, and disruptive conduct will not be permitted. Profanity that is disruptive will not be permitted. Racist and hate-filled epithets are prohibited. Loud and boisterous conduct would be prohibited. Cheering, jeering, clapping, unless for ceremonial purposes as determined by the mayor, are prohibited. Signs and noise makers would be prohibited. All persons would have to remain in their seats during the meeting unless they are leaving the commission chambers or addressing the commission from the podium. Any person desiring to make public comment shall complete a public comment request card, provide the clerk of commission, and deposit the card in the public comment request box. The box will be opened at the beginning of the commission business agenda and also at the beginning of public comment sessions. The mayor shall call the person requesting to make public comment during the appropriate public comment periods. Any person not called at the meeting because of time restrictions would have the right to be first in line at the next meeting. When persons are called by the mayor to address the commission, the individual will address the commission from the podium unless the person has a medical condition preventing them from doing so, in which the mayor will make an attempt to accommodate that individual. Any individual violating a commission rule will be warned by the mayor or presiding officer, and if the individual does not seek the activity warned, shall be asked to leave. If the individual refuses to comply with the mayor or presiding officer's directive to leave the city hall, the individual may be charged criminally for his or her conduct at a meeting. This is just this is a starting point. It's your meeting, it's your choice to decide how to go forward. These are just recommendations or basically something that I put together that I figured you guys could work on at this point in time. If you like it all, we'll just adopt it. If you want to make changes, we can look at doing that also.
Mayor, I have a few comments and ideas here. Thank you for putting this together, Mr. Patrizio. So on the business agenda for 6 and 7, basically modifying comment on agenda items to bulking it prior to the agenda items. I can see where that would streamline the business agenda a little bit. I do, however, prefer the format of hearing first the city's take on an agenda item and then the citizens' take on an agenda item. And it allows citizens to respond to anything the city may say, things that they feel that they left out or context that maybe they feel that we're missing. Placing citizens in bulk prior to that disrupts that information flow. You know, if we've got a long agenda with like 10 items on it and somebody's got to come up and talk about agenda item number 8, 3 hours later, we'll finally get around to it, and I'm not going to remember what they said about it. I think that the format of having a comment session after each business item is perfectly fine, and it should remain as it is. Let's see here. So, any person providing public comment may speak once for a total of 5 minutes on resolutions and ordinances. I think that's part of that same thing, which I pretty much just crossed out. Once public comment is completed, the commission shall immediately begin debate on each agenda item. And again, same point, if somebody's got a comment on agenda item 9, and then an hour and a half later, the city presents it, and they realize, oh, I didn't really respond to that point. Well, now they can't, and now I, as a commissioner, don't know what the public's thought is on that item. Let's see here. So this is on item 12. During the business agenda, only persons approved by the city manager may make presentations on behalf of the city. I crossed out only persons approved by the city manager and wrote only persons approved by the city commission. It's our meeting. I think that maybe that could be an or, any presentations that the city manager would like to have, or any presentations approved of by the commission. It might be, that is probably open for discussion if it would require a single commission sponsor or perhaps a vote of the commission. But I think the commission should have the ability to unilaterally invite presentations.
On that particular item, the reason why I left that city manager is if you open the door to other city organizations or for non-city purposes, you open the door for everybody. And you then cannot limit it. That is why I put the city manager approval on that. So, for example, if you decide, okay, I'm going to let the YMCA in here, and I like the YMCA, and give a presentation, well, then you've just opened your door to every organization out there. So that's the reason for scaling that back. That's, there is.
I see where you're going with that.
There is, on the other hand, on the non-agenda public, they can come in at that period of time, and if they want to make something up, as long as it's around city business or something in the activity in the city, they can present something at that point.
I know that in the past, we've had presentations, I presume sponsored by the city manager, that were for organizations like the YMCA. Would that be then cut off? Because wouldn't that be the same problem for him?
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about a dramatic reduction in the category of...
You're talking about the only thing in the business side of it, the business agenda items would probably presentations that the city, from city employees, and also perhaps maybe you have someone that's coming in doing a development or something that's going to significantly affect the city of Piqua.
So I suppose under that legal argument, the commission has no ability to slot out time for a presentation that we feel is in the public interest.
Special meeting?
I think you could do that on the non-agenda public comment period if you wish to do it there. But once, again, when you do that, just a warning on that, once you do that, you open that up to everybody. So if you have a fringe group out there that wants to give a presentations, and they're going to say, well, this is affecting the city, or this is a community activity, you're opening it up to everybody, every organization.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying, though, is like, we don't have any discretion on that whatsoever to use our right judgment to decide what's of city interest and what's not.
I think that it's very difficult in that case.
I
think you open yourself up to potential lawsuit.
Yeah, I hear you, and I know we live in like a very litigious time, and so they'll sue us for everything. Could you, I think this could be an interesting conversation to reframe this, especially if you're talking about dramatically reducing the scope of what even the city manager can bring in for presentations. Could you bring us some like case law or something, or, I guess some research that shows like, not just that this is a theoretical problem, but this has been a problem for other municipalities?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think that, I hear your point on that. It could be a interesting discussion on that. Okay, so moving on to your section on non-agenda public comment. So on item 15, you wrote, any non-agenda public comment shall be for no more than 60 minutes. So here is kind of an idea I had today, and maybe something we can discuss during this work session here. And I think this covers several of these items, is instead of, there's been a lot of discussion about trying to limit public comment. So I understand that there's a need to have timely meetings, And so I'm wondering if maybe we could do something where commission meetings are for 3 hours. They're from 6 to 9, plus sometimes we tack on an executive session at the beginning. And that being that it is 6 to 9, it is a 3-hour meeting. So if we conclude the business agenda at 6:30, then that gives us 2.5 hours until 9 for public comment. If we have a particularly long agenda and we don't get done with it till 9:10, well, we're out of time for public comment. Or if we get done with it at 8:50, we've got 10 minutes for public comment. The Constitution provides for the idealized version of what our rights are, but we are human and bound in physical reality, which does involve time and things like blood sugar and hydration, and also being very tired. So I don't think that it is overly onerous to say that we would schedule our meetings for 3 hours, and whatever time remains after the business agenda, that is the time for public comment. If it's 2.5 hours or 2 minutes, rather than, because in the other scenarios, let's say we do get to 8:50 and we're finally done with the business agenda. Well, now we're signing ourselves up for another 60 minutes of public comment.
Again, you can always, the way I had it set up, if you desired that meeting, you could say, hey, we're tired tonight, we don't want to go forward with public comment.
Yeah, and that always remains our option.
Yeah.
We rarely exercise it, but perhaps scheduling it as such, and then rather than us having to put forward that we would motion to close early because we're tired, we could perhaps, if conversation's interesting, going in an interesting place, we could perhaps, on the other side of it, motion to extend, 15 minutes or a half hour. I'd be curious what my fellow commissioners think of that, but basically that would set us up with a relatively hard stop at 9, permitting that we were able to run through the rest of the business agenda prior to that time.
I don't dislike it at all, so it's not a bad idea.
I need to consider, I think.
Yeah, yeah, that's something I came up with earlier today, but
Any idea, Frank?
I guess my issue there is does that mean that if we do, an agenda like tonight, right? And we're done with the business meeting part at 7:10, 7:15. And there's just a handful of folks here. Are we sitting here until 9 o'clock?
oh,
twiddling our
no, we
thumbs?
would be, as per usual, whenever the public comment is exhausted, we would then adjourn. But if the public comment is not exhausted itself by 9,
Then we're done at
then it would be done at 9. Yeah, so if we had a quick meeting and it was done in 50 minutes, and then, there's only 3 people that want to talk for public comment, then we get out early for the night. But just that 9's not a target, but it's the hard stop.
Could I make a suggestion?
Yes.
How about instead of putting a time frame for the non-agenda public comment period, that the commission, if they decide to have it, would set a time frame at the time they decide to go forward with the public comments. So let's say you decide to go forward with a meeting tonight and there's 5 people here, and you say, well, we're going to allow public comment for 30 minutes. Or you can set it for 25 minutes or 15 minutes, but you would do it right at the beginning of the public comment session.
And that might make it more specific to each individual meeting
Right.
day, but I prefer a fixed rule rather than arbitrating it every time.
Okay.
Which, as you know, as
You
a-
gotta, you gotta work here a little bit, because to do what you're asking, to say 9 o'clock, as Frank's right, he says, oh, we could be here at 9, or,
it's not out of the norm.
I'm not saying
for-
yours is wrong, I'm not saying mine's right, but I think we
It's
have to make
highly
it workable.
precedented that a meeting has a fixed start and end time. It's actually a little bit unprecedented that meetings have a boundless upside for their end time. So it's not out of the norm that we would have a fixed end time. And then again, some of your earlier comments about, possible litigation, well, I think that arbitrating start and stop times, that's where you might get into a problem. But if we had it, you know, because we've got it, I think it says somewhere in the charter, does it not, that it's 6 o'clock is the start time.
That's correct.
We could potentially, I don't even know, maybe,
Change that.
maybe there's something in there already that designates an end time, but we could say that,
There's nothing that designate end
we
time.
could designate that, you know, it's a 3-hour meeting, that's the hard stop.
Charter change that.
You know, to just stop early
Look,
would be a motion
it's
to
your
adjourn.
rules, you guys, if you give me some guidance on this, I think all of you kind of has to come to a consensus on it.
I agree.
We'll,
Well, about the only issue that I had with any of this, I didn't have a copy of that document, but that's okay. I listened to you when you were speaking.
He sent it to your email.
Oh, you did?
He did.
Oh, okay, I just didn't print it out.
Yep, neither did
Oh,
I.
I thought I was gonna have it
I
printed out
didn't print
here.
it out either.
It's all right, it's all good.
I listened,
The
but,
one thing that I wanted to bring up, and this might get me in a little trouble, but that's okay. So there's this section 2 under C, no one shall express himself or herself in a manner that interrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. For example, talking, which I get that, or yelling, clapping, jeering, or cheering. I can understand the yelling and the jeering, but to sit there and we've gotten talked to about this, you know, some cases, well, they got to get clapped for. And we can't get something that's, you know, we can be clapped for. And I'm gonna pick on my favorite 4 people up there, because I remember their names. So let's say Josh got up here, hi Josh. And Josh got up here and he gave some fantastic oration that everybody was just dumbfounded, right? And so even Millie and Jim, they're like, oh man, that's great, but they can't really say anything. But I would rather have them give 30 seconds of heartfelt, tempered applause rather than have to wait and have each one in turn get up and go what he said, right? Because that'll just stretch things out longer. You know, I'd rather get, 30 seconds of appropriate applause. Or maybe wind chimes.
Yeah, they're, I guess, trying to define what is and is not cheering, jeering, clapping, and the intent behind that gets a little bit hairy. But I hear you on that one. I'm not sure how I feel about that one. Let's see here. So we also had on non-agenda public item comment, item 17, all comments should be related to city business activities, which I concur that people complaining about things that other people said about them on Facebook is maybe not of interest or benefit to the city business. I guess we would need to determine who and how and have a procedure wrapped around determining that. I think that maybe some kind of procedure where any one of us could challenge whether or not the current statement is of public interest, and then perhaps the mayor could call in a vote or make a determination or something of that measure. I know right now, the way that it is all on you, man. It is, if you don't speak up, it's all on you, and it feels like it feels like we put a lot of pressure on you, but I think maybe if we had a procedure where other
Makes it easier.
commissioners are allowed to
Sure.
speak up, and then you can confirm or deny it, that might be
I'm
something.
all right with that.
So I think 17's in the right direction, in the right spirit. I think we need to wrap it in some kind of procedure to accomplish that. 18, the clerk of commission shall not be under any obligation to keep minutes for the non-agenda part of public comment section. We're gonna need to, I guess, cite around that if that is, I know there was questions before. I think we answered them about what the charter says about that. And I think we had determined that just merely writing public comments were made was notes enough. But then we reversed that, and I don't remember if we reversed it because of public pressure or if we reversed it because it was legally required.
well, because we're saying this out to public, we're having a business meeting. The business meeting will continue to keep minutes on, but the public comment session, we won't have to.
Yeah, and I think that's
Clear
what we
that out.
determined, was it was,
Yeah.
and maybe that's something where we could have a clarification.
Well, I think this is an attempt to clarify that, just to make sure that people understand we're not gonna take minutes of the public comment
And
session.
if it's recorded, I mean, then there's a record of it.
Yeah.
So,
Not really, the public comment section is not going to be part of the business meeting,
no, it's separate.
okay?
Yeah.
You're gonna be out of the public
Yeah, because you're talking about the public comments, not the agenda item.
Right,
comments.
the agenda items, yes, the agenda items will continue to, and that's why I said any and maybe I can put that in there. Yeah, I'd have it on there, non-agenda public comments. So the public comments in the regular meeting will still be made official parts of the minutes, okay?
I guess I'm generally okay with that. Let's see here. So public comment, 19, public comment shall be only afforded to persons who live within the city of Piqua limits. Same question as last time, is what's our 4A compliant means of determining that?
It's their street address. That's why you ask for the street address. Now, you also see in the business agenda part, I also added non-citizens if it affected them, their business or their utilities. The purpose for doing this is, quite frankly, is I'm not sure why the people that live outside the city of Piqua and are not affected by what we do should be coming into our meetings. And
I could not agree more. However, again, 4A compliant means of determining that is.
yeah, that's why we would have that's why I'm asking for the cards, quite frankly. That's part of asking for the cards is to do that.
So about the cards, so I had an idea around that as well. So I had said last time, and I remain opposed to sign-up sheets being the end-all, be-all of public comment. However, I think as perhaps a way of adding more structure to public comments, we could have a sign-up sheet, because we've got in here basically a description of, people would go in the back, you'd sign up for public comment, not for comment on an agenda item. And then the mayor would call you out as he goes down the list. Well, my idea is, because I don't like it that if you showed up at the meeting a little bit late, or if you were suddenly inspired by whatever to say something, that now you can't, because, well, you didn't sign up. So what I think we should do, or what could be a good idea, is to have a sign-up sheet. If you've got something you absolutely know you want to say, and it's, really, maybe it's about an event or something next week, and no matter what happens in the meeting, you know what you're going to say anyways. So you can go ahead and sign up on that sheet, and the mayor can then use that as kind of a priority first pass list. And whoever signs up, you get to be the first one up to come speak during public comment, and the mayor will just go down the list. Once that list is exhausted, then if you hadn't signed up but you felt inspired to say something, then you could come up like normal. But we could use that sign-up sheet not as a gatekeeping mechanism for public comments, but for a kind of prioritization and organization of how the comments are made, to try to get that streamlined. I know sometimes people come here with events or something that they want to shout out, and then there's a bunch of other stuff that happens during public comment, and then they feel kind of nervous about I don't know if my thing's really that important. But this would help kind of get those people who know what they want to say up to the front of the line, and the mayor can run through that, and again, could be kind of like a fast pass as a Disneyland, basically. And then after that list is exhausted, everybody else would be free to come up if you had not already spoken. Does anybody have any comments or thoughts on that one?
I want to think on that just a bit, because what's to stop somebody that just doesn't want to sign up, wait until the end, and then getting up and speaking?
Oh, no, they simply could do that if they wanted to do that. But this gives a way of, again, trying to prioritize people, especially, I know there are people who come here who want to make a public announcement, and they sit here
They get it out, yeah.
Yeah, they have to sit here for 4 hours before they get to do that.
Yeah. I've seen it.
Reward those who plan ahead.
Yeah.
That is exactly it, yeah. And it's not gatekeeping anybody out, but it is rewarding, kind of, if you know what you want to do, sign up for it, and then now you're on the fast pass list.
Good fast pass list, I like that.
At this stage, will we receive amended comments?
Well, I was going to run through it and see if we can have some consensus on some things. All right, are you folks okay with splitting the business agenda with the non-agenda public comment? Generally speaking,
Would that involve adjourning?
you would adjourn from this meeting and then start the meeting on the other end.
It would be separate, yeah, I'm
Yes.
okay with that.
So there's general
Are we
consensus
still
to do
going
that.
to televise that?
Yeah, it's all.
Yeah, you'd still televise it. You guys can do as you wish at that point. Okay. Are you fine with city staff leaving at the end of the business agenda items?
It's on us. I don't have a problem with it. I mean, people will come up and ask questions. during the public comment section. And if we don't have the answer, we'll write it down and we'll get the answer. I can,
Yeah, Mayor, I would also offer that any questions that are asked can be answered and then put in the agenda packet in the Q&A section, so it's a matter of document.
you've been doing a good job of that after my Wednesday meetings, so.
Yeah, and as always with the questions, if you send them to one of your commissioners or to the city manager ahead of time, you can get an answer, especially if it's a hard question that
Yep.
requires some research.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay, good. So I'm looking at the first 5 items. I don't think they're very controversial, so I think probably everybody's okay with that.
There we go.
It sounded like everybody seemed to be okay with 6, 7, and 8 regarding the citizens and people, non-citizens may speak if it's a non-agenda, if it's an item affecting them.
I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. The public comment, this is the one I know Thomas or Mr. Homan, Commissioner Homan has stated that he would like the 5 minutes for each one. Some of you may think otherwise. What's the consensus here? Whether you want it at the beginning or if you want to leave it as we've done in the
I think it
past.
should be as each person, each item comes up, let them speak. I don't have a problem.
Again, so when the sign-up sheet comes up, the person that's going to sign up or whatever is going to have to put what agenda items they're speaking on.
Now, I would say the sign-up sheet would be for the public comment at the end. I would say that we could have I mean, maybe we could look at doing maybe an individual sign-up sheet per agenda item. And then, you're gonna run into the same issue. And I would think that after we've exhausted the list, that anybody who feels so inspired to come up and talk, that they should still be able to.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna really be able to do a sign-up sheet for, like each of
The business,
the business items on there. But, and there are folks that sometimes they don't know until they get in the door what the agenda
Yeah,
is.
it's hard to anticipate a counterpoint if you didn't know what the point was gonna be. So I remain opposed to adjusting that in a substantial way.
And I can adjust that, that's fine. We're okay with the 5 minutes. Does anybody want to go lower than that? Some communities allow 3 minutes.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
fine.
good.
I'm fine with 5.
5, okay. You're fine with everybody's okay with the roll
I'm
call
okay with it.
on ordinances and voice vote on resolutions? I'm assuming that's not a problem.
All golden.
And then, number 12, I know,
Scroll down.
what's that?
I just
Okay,
scrolled.
Number 12 is the person's allowed to speak at the business part of the meeting, have to be approved by the city manager.
Yeah, if that's gonna be, include a substantial reduction in the category of what can be a presentation, I would say that we need to scope that out first before we designate. Because if, it really sounds like what you're talking about is reducing the scope of who can present. And if we, as long as we're following that scope, I don't think it matters if it's the commission or the city manager inviting somebody, as long as we've reduced that subset. So I would say that needs to be
I
more
mean,
fleshed out.
I can work with the city manager on that, and we can try and come up with, that public comment will be limited to city employees or agenda, people having items on the agenda, giving a presentation or future economic development, something of that nature. I don't want it to leave it open where anybody can bring in anybody for any certain reasons.
Would you be, I guess, in essence, what you're proposing, the reduction of presentations down only to city employees, perhaps even department heads?
The problem with doing that is that every once in a while, we'll have a developer come in, and they'll want to give a presentation of what they're going to do, and I think that's city business, and I think that's appropriate for the business session, and that's why I don't want to limit it only to city employees, though I wouldn't, if it wasn't for that portion of it, I would say yes, but that's what I'm concerned about.
Can people give presentations during public comment?
You can, but you have to I would strongly suggest that it
Same
be,
issue, I understand.
once you open that up to anybody, you're gonna open it up. And I think it's good for
To any and
non-agenda.
everything.
If you wanna go that way, you can, but just remember, you're opening it up to anybody.
I know.
Right. But that, you're right, you're opening up to everybody. That could be a bad thing, but there are a number of people that I have heard right there, both before I got to sit in this chair and after, who just amaze me with the stuff that they do for our citizens, for our community, that doesn't necessarily have direct involvement with city businesses, or city
No,
business.
we're not saying that, we're saying they can talk about that stuff
Right.
during 5 minutes of public comment. They
Right.
can do that.
But no, I was talking about the presentations thing that where we've had people come in and do presentations before, but,
You can always have non-agenda presentations. You can have limits on what you're going to accept in that,
okay,
but they have to be content neutral.
right.
On the business side, I would strongly suggest leaving it to things that are related to city
City business.
business. Or the functioning of city government.
All
We'll
right,
work on
next.
something on that, okay?
Anything else?
The rules, the rules in general, the rules of conduct, is there anything
What
that
number
has
is
a
that?
group?
That's the last group of things. On item 6, I struck out signs, because before as a commissioner in the audience, I held up a sign once.
Yeah.
I think as long as the sign follows the profanity codes of spoken speech elsewhere, signs will be fine.
I disagree strongly with that, because you'll have 10 people up here with signs blocking up the view, and then other people are gonna get upset with them. And we had a situation where people brought in signs and wanted to hold them up, and I think to me, it's disruptive, but it's your meeting, you folks can decide.
And that's fair enough. It's disruption would still be a thing that
Okay,
you
but
can't
once you
do.
say signs are fine, Darren's gonna be in the front row with this sign at 4 feet
Well, I mean,
wide.
we're saying speech is fine, but in a non-disruptive context. So, I mean, signs are fine in a non-disruptive context. I don't see a gigantic distinction there.
I don't know, man, that's a slippery slope.
They all are, I don't know.
So is that a preference for signs or no signs?
My preference would be no.
Okay. No.
My preference was not a hypocrite. Since I've
Because
used
you
sign-
held one up.
I've held some signs.
He held up his sign, so he's got, I understand, nothing wrong with that. Hey,
So
at least
anything
you called
else in the
yourself out.
rules of conduct?
No, I thought that was
Anything?
great. Thank you, Commissioner Holman.
Very good. I appreciate the session with you, and I'll try and put something together for our meeting in July sometime.
All right,
Would this end up being like a resolution or an ordinance?
An ordinance, it will replace the current ordinance, rules of conduct, which I believe is 30.10, maybe 15. I'm not 100% sure, but
We,
we'll replace that ordinance.
Yeah, I think we probably want to make sure we work through that before it appears on the agenda for a vote.
To be careful about that, because you're supposed to do this in
In public.
commission meetings, so.
Oh, no, I didn't say we wouldn't do it in commission. meeting, I just-
I'll put together, it's gonna be 3 reads, so we can amend things and things of that nature, okay? Thank you.
Absolutely.
next on our agenda is the consent agenda.
Approval of the minutes from the June 4th, 2024 regular city commission meeting.
Any comments from commissioners?
I'd approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to new business. First is ordinance number O-9-24, first reading.
An ordinance allocating adult use cannabis marijuana excise tax revenue.
I'll present this. The state of Ohio is taxing the sale of marijuana for recreational use, and there's a 10% excise tax. And in it, 36% of that excise tax goes to the host community. We have 2 dispensaries. I assume that those 2 currently will eventually be able to sell recreational marijuana. When they do so, they will have to pay the excise tax. The tax is collected by the state of Ohio and then distributed to the communities quarterly. And it's actually the month after the end of the quarter is when they're supposed to be distributed. I don't know if we'll get any this year. I would suspect that beginning next year, we probably would receive some revenue from the marijuana tax. And what this ordinance says is the money collected would go to our parks departments for improvements for the parks.
Any comments from commissioners?
Yeah, I got a couple. So the my first question is the additional revenue, is that going to capital improvements within the parks or to employee?
That would be the determination of the city manager and the commission.
Do we have any idea of what you're initially splitting that 50-50, 75-25?
Yeah, I would believe it would be by budget year, but, knowing that we are understaffed, that would be the first place I think that we need to shore up. We're behind in maintenance, and so we want to maintain what we have before we build new or rebuild. Not knowing what that limit would be in terms of the revenue, I think after the first year, if we commit that to using it for labor, then we could look at potentially the second year after we have a history, that if we start to do a split and maybe split it between both operational and capital, that would be an opportunity.
Okay. And then my second question is that the tax rate, what is it, 10% of 36% or 36% of 10%, whatever that is.
36% of the 10.
That's set by the General Assembly in the state. So we unfortunately do not have the ability to go to the county and ask them to put an additional tax on that for us.
I would have to rely on Frank, but I believe that would be a ballot issue that'd have to be put forward.
We don't have the ability to add sales tax. The county is receiving some sales tax revenues from the sale of marijuana. We can certainly put pressure on them to divert some of that to our community rather than use it in other communities, but we cannot force the county to do what they need to do.
Because it's my understanding that we are the only municipality in Miami County who has any dispensaries.
That's correct. That's, as far as I know, that's the case. And some cities in our county have done a moratorium on them also.
And they're looking at changing some of those, correct?
I don't know. I mean,
I've heard, so.
That was my biggest.
Good. Anything?
I don't know who came up with this idea, but they deserve a hug.
Former Mayor Thomas, what was Thomas's last name?
Vote,
Thomas Vogt.
yeah.
Was his idea, and the commission at the time.
Yeah, I spent a couple of years on the Parks Board, and I know what their budget looks like. Actually, I know what their budget doesn't look like. And whether this goes to, I don't think there's gonna be enough there for it to go to capital improvements, like, oh, we're gonna get, a bunch of new stuff. Maybe
Some stuff.
eventually, but city manager's right. Get everything going, let's get caught up first. And I think this is a real good way for us to be able to pay for getting caught up.
And remember that one of the projects we've got going on right now is with Hampton Golf, and we're hoping that they will improve the revenue, so that at the end of the year, we're not sending huge amounts of money to
From the general fund.
From the general fund to the Parks Board to take
Yeah.
care of that. So
Compensate.
these two things together may work to our advantage.
Any comments from citizens?
Valerie Mulliken, business owner here in Piqua, and I live on Piqua Clayton Road. First off, I think it's very astute to take recreational marijuana revenue and use it for recreation in Piqua. Very interesting. I would.
Kind of ironic, yes.
Yes, right?
That's irony.
I would encourage you to rethink the catch-up because we already have a budget allocated to provide for staffing and for maintenance of the parks. That was already built into your annual budget, if I'm not mistaken, and is supposed to be annually. I would encourage you to take that percentage and place it in a capital improvement fund and start with Hance Pavilion. That is a significant historical structure here in Piqua, and I know that our historical preservation team will be definitely focusing on that. And I do believe that it is an essential component to the quality of life in Piqua. So
I agree.
that's what I would encourage you guys to consider. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just additional comment. When we had budget hearings for 2024, we went into them knowing that we were not going to have anticipated revenue to bring the Parks Department up to where we thought they should be. So that's where that discussion comes from.
Where are we missing revenue to bring the Parks Department up? What are we missing there?
Well, my understanding is that we make a forecast of revenue, and then the budget comes to the commission, and we had this discussion about, is the park system really fully staffed the way we want to see them staffed? And the answer was not for this budget year.
Okay, was it for last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago?
We had budget in, November of 23, looking forward to 24, and we asked the very specific question, do we feel that the amount of staffing in our personnel in the Parks Department, is that adequate? And the answer was no. We didn't think we had the revenue to be able to add a person.
So then I would go back to a question that a lot of people have asked, why did we build Lock 9? If we were inadequate already prior to, why did we build another park in the busiest part of Piqua that is going to take an exceptional amount of employees to our staffing and revenue to keep up? Because let's face it, guys, it's on your main drag. Every person who comes through Piqua on 36 will see that facility. So
Can you just answer your own question then?
Well-
Because every person that comes to town will visit Lock 9. That's why.
right, but there's no parking there.
There's parking around there. There is. The island across the
I'm
street.
deeply concerned that we win the lottery in getting tax revenue from recreational marijuana. We win the lottery, so to speak, and we take our lottery winnings to make up the deficits for our community that we shouldn't be in a deficit state. That's what I'm concerned about.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anything else?
Kim Heisler, 1802 West Parkway Drive. I'd like to piggyback on the same. I have the same concerns.
I'm having trouble hearing you. Good.
I just want to piggyback on what she said. I have the same concerns. And also, are we guaranteed that money from the dispensaries? Because from what I
It's
understand.
tax revenue. I mean, it's
Tax
based
revenue,
off of
yeah.
activity. I mean, it's as if we have the same guarantee on that as we have on collecting your income tax.
All right.
It's,
So
it's
they
just
get
whatever the
taxed,
activity
they
is.
get taxed 10%. It's an excise tax. We get 36% of that.
Well, and I was just curious because I was under the impression and heard somewhere that it's not even really legalized on the federal level, but it's at the state and it has to be paid out in cash, which doesn't hit the books and stuff like that. So I don't know if that's a concern or,
So
Not,
there's
but-
medical and then there's recreational. And the recreational, I hear what you're saying, but they're still getting taxed on it. They make
Okay.
deposits in the
well,
bank.
as long as we
and
get
stuff.
it. I mean, I don't want to, as a city,
Right.
be able to provide something and not be able to get the benefit because of a loophole.
They will still have to have records of each
Mm-hmm.
and every sale. And when they have those records of every sale,
Get
that's
audited.
gonna go to state commission. And so they've gotta make even if they're getting it in cash, they have to be able to have those records of how much tax they collected and how much of that goes to, in this case, the city. of
Okay,
Piqua.
well, I was just looking out for
Yeah.
the city, because you
No
don't
problem.
want to do that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Do you have a comment that you wanted to add?
Yeah, so I've been here 3.5 years, and since I've arrived, I can tell you that our park system, staff-wise, is woefully understaffed. And there was a decline, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 years ago in the staffing that was a result of probably economic pressures and reduced revenue stream. And so when you look at the park system, and I want to give kudos to the Parks Department and Public Works in general, that they're doing an outstanding job in the small amount of staff that we have to get things done and contract out a lot of that work. So in order for us to get caught up with our maintenance activities, it's going to take additional FTEs. And I would think that after a year or two of that we would have a track record or a forecast of what the sales would be. And it's not going to be as a dramatic of a windfall as you would
Yeah.
think it would be. We're looking in a high revenue of potentially $200,000. So, in terms of staffing, that would give us 3 FTEs to add to our 5. We only have 5 FTEs in parks right now.
Okay. This is a first reading. And any other comments from commissioners?
No.
We'll leave it at that. Next on our agenda is ordinance number 0-10-24, first reading.
An ordinance to make appropriations for the city of Piqua, Ohio for the year 2024.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. This is a request for appropriations in the Finance Division for an increase of $14,000, and this is related to a contract that I have a resolution here for the Commissioners' consideration as well to allow the city manager to sign the contract for a budgeting software program to help with that process. And we are asking that this be passed as an emergency because the vendor that I have been working with was willing to give us a $4,000 discount if we sign the contract by the end of the month. So in order to take care of that, we'd have to go ahead and move with it if the commission would
So-
see fit to do that.
Can you list one benefit of this, this software?
Yes, so, the budgeting process is a pretty lengthy and
Oh, yeah.
cumbersome process that involves, the finance department and all departments across the city, really, and the commission as well, and is a really heavy lift for the finance department as well as the other departments. Last, 2 to 3 months, the whole process from beginning to end. And currently, we're doing that. We're using multiple Excel spreadsheets, which is a very cumbersome process and requires a lot of data entry. You run into, formula problems, just different things with it. It's a really great tool that accountants love, but there are some inherent problems with that. And this, what we're looking for is technology to streamline processes and make them much more streamlined, save time. And the other aspect of it that's important to me is to provide strong internal controls over the data. So where you have, say, data in a lot of spreadsheets where multiple people are involved with that, multiple people, they're in different locations just due to the nature of the budgeting process and how cumbersome it is and how many people that it involves. So this provides a solution where everything is entered into a software solution by all the staff across the city, and then that allows for much more tighter control over that data. And then also, as we work through that process with the departments, the program allows for, different scenarios. You can plug those scenarios in and get, quick results. It makes that process go a lot easier and smoother rather than everybody talking and going back and doing some more calculations. And they're, getting back together, we can sometimes run those scenarios at that time
So it has a forecasting component to it as
Yes.
well, right?
Yes.
So with my next question, I guess, would be, with the software, any software, is the company reputable enough to give us support 3 to 5 years down the line?
Yes, yes, it is. And this is a well-known, highly regarded product. ClearGov is the name of the company. And I have a list of other Ohio cities around within a pretty good area here that use this. And in fact, my former employer used it, but I'd ask him for a broader list. So we've got quite a few. He named quite a few cities and said there were more that he didn't name, but it's very well known and is well supported.
Any other questions? Any other questions from commission?
I don't have a problem with us going through this. I do have a problem with rushing this through and making it an emergency and passing it through tonight. Just based on, if we do this now, we'll save X however many dollars, because, our bosses are sitting out there and not all of them are here, and I'd really like to have more of them have an opportunity to speak up.
How long have you been evaluating this software solution?
This one probably I've been looking at it a number of weeks. I've seen a demo on it, talked to the representative. And like I say, I'm somewhat familiar with this,
Previous
with the
employer.
history. So, I know it's a good product and will do what we, want it to do.
I have a comment as well. So I just want to support the finance director. I mean, he's not been here quite a year, and we've struggled through budget cycles and trying to get the information to be accurate. And what this product would do would allow more transparency to the public, quite frankly. So as we go through and we craft the budget and bring it out into the public for public dissemination through the commission, there'll be better dashboards and better analytics and things like that. So to me, it's an enhancement in transparency that we're trying to achieve through using this tool. And it's not, to have 3 readings doesn't result in anything better than, we're just trying to increase our transparency and try to save money on the actual subscription.
I can tell you, if I go to Kroger's and I don't have a coupon, or if my wife knows that I'm gone there to get Oreos, and I could have saved money by going through the app, and I didn't because I wanted the Oreos and I spent the money, I'd be in a lot of trouble. So, I think we are trying to save money and we are trying to be transparent. I know one of the benefits of the software is that the forecasting models that they have, even if you change variables in it, it'll update and change with it. So if you forecast it for 3 years out, you say, no, what about 5 years? It'll do that for you. So I like that.
So the reason why I had asked earlier is when was this started to be evaluated? When was the software starting to be evaluated? Was to get an idea of how long have you guys known about this or been working up towards it? I guess ironically we're talking about forecasting, budgeting software, but we now have to emergency appropriate money for it because we couldn't get. Go ahead.
Sure. So, I'll echo what Jerry said. Coming from my former employer, we used OpenGov, which was a very similar product to this. And so when I arrived, I was really wanted to see us use a similar product, but we went through a few changes in the finance department and didn't have an opportunity to have somebody here long enough to implement a product of this nature. So we're at a point now where I fully support what he's asking for in terms of it being the proper tool. We're long tenured employees and we've seen a lot of things. And in speaking with the directors the other day, we had our leadership team meeting. They all wanted to sign on the line. So it's something that's been embraced by the leadership team, which is critical to not only building the budget, but ultimately reporting out on the budget and our objectives as it relates to the strategic plan. So this is a tool that will help us do what we were discussing partially in the state of the city, which is building the budget and then reporting back on it.
You have any comments?
Yes, I have a few. So I'm going to start this off with Jerry and Paul. I understand that the budget situation you all inherited was a bit challenging. I got a couple issues here. In the sheet that we were given, that is supposed to be the reasoning and the logic behind why we're doing this. I don't see anywhere on here that you're asking the commission to approve $14,000 transfer to the general fund. Unless I'm just ignorant and don't know how to read this right, but I do not see the numbers $14,000 anywhere on here.
Yeah, this. I'm sorry, are you looking at the staff report or the ordinance itself?
I'm looking at the staff report.
Yeah, so the appropriation, I think it's two things. So we have the appropriation, which is to move money to be able to purchase the program, and then the ClearPoint, the second staff report would be actually the contract, enter into a contract with ClearGov.
Okay, but on the one where we're moving money, don't we still have to move $14,000?
Well, this is not moving money, it would just be increasing the appropriations in the finance division. On the document, the ordinance document here with the numbers, it would be on the first page there at the bottom. It shows that $14,000 increase to appropriations.
Okay, and where are we increasing this from?
From the general fund balance in the general fund.
So we're moving $14,000 from the general fund to the finance department.
Well, it's within, so the finance department is a division within the general fund. So we're not actually making a transfer. It is just increasing the appropriations, the original appropriations within the division, but it is one of the divisions in the general fund.
Okay, so you're increasing the appropriation by $14,000?
Yes.
Okay. Again, that would have been helpful to know. Before, like I said, the first time I heard it was when you mentioned that figure. Now, I do appreciate the fact that in the ordinance, they're a little bit larger so we can actually read it, but it is, I don't know, 15 pages, maybe, the entire budget, right, of here. To my understanding, the only change is that $14,000, correct?
Yeah, you're talking about in this document?
Yeah, in this document.
That is correct.
So I had to flip through. Again, I understand that this is what you all inherited, but we got to flip through all this, and I read this entire document, and at no point was it clear to me what we were actually doing.
Okay, I apologize for that.
And again, I'm not blaming anyone here, but here's the kicker. You're also telling me it's an emergency and I have to do it. So if there is something that is this important that we're asking to waive a second and third reading, I gotta tell you, it's pretty tough for me to be willing to go along with this based off of the fact that it wasn't even clear to me what was in the information that was given to me.
Well, like I said, I apologize that you didn't that it wasn't made clear. We can, moving forward, consider a better way to present the appropriation ordinances, and we'll do so.
I think that would be a very good idea.
That's a start.
If we don't waive the 3-reading rule, the biggest consequence is we lose $4,050.
If we
for
don't
not
waive it,
complying within June 30.
yes, if we don't waive it, but we move forward with the purchase, then we would lose that, yes.
I would point out to my fellow commissioners that we have a special meeting next week, which this could be tabled into, and that would still put us before the deadline of June 30th for the, so that is a possibility before the commissioners as well. I just point out, Mr. Oberdorfer, you've told me what you guys are doing with the budget. I think it's great. I think you're really going to get a handle on it. To Mr. DeBras's point, you guys inherited a lot of Excel sheets at best. It's very clear that you need some kind of solution. If your division heads think this is the good solution, that's great. I do believe you, and I do think this is going to help you do what you need to do. The key issue is just making it an emergency at the last minute. And that's why, again, I asked how long have you guys been looking at this? And Mr. O'Brien, your response was a handful of weeks or a couple of weeks. I mean, I feel like if it was that big of a deal, that, this is seems like it's like a big keystone to your accounting plan. I think the commission just would have liked to have been made more aware of that earlier on so that it didn't need to become an emergency appropriation, which if, I guess to Mr. DeBras's point, the format of the packet here, we have done several pages of the budget, and it's kind of like a needle in a haystack to find that 14,000. I get that, but maybe we could highlight it next time. And there was another point I was going to make, but it escaped me. I think one of you wanted to respond to that.
Yeah, certainly. So the urgency is only in getting the benefit of the savings. So if you want to take 3 readings, that's entirely upon the commission's decision. And it was just the only expedited idea was to, get a cheaper rate.
But his point, Commissioner DeRoss's point, is still valid. I guess things need to be made clearer to us when they're brought to us.
Right,
Because
and I'll default, this is out of the sheets that you have are out of Springbrook. And
Yep.
so, again, our accounting methodology and the way things that are printed out for the commission make it difficult.
And now I will, if the point in all of this was to prove how antiquated and how awful the existing software is, bravo, well
You
done.
proved it, yeah.
That was not the intent at all.
However, I do not believe this sheet comes from the software.
And that's the point
The
that needs to be made.
I guess an amalgamation of some of the points being made up here is, if it is an emergency, we need an excessive amount of clarity up front as to what it is that we're voting on and why exactly it has to be an emergency. To Commissioner Simmons' point about, maybe being interested in some of responses from other people in the community, again, whether or not that input's going to be valuable for evaluating a esoteric software package is debatable, but having that opportunity, or at least explaining to the community why did we waive that opportunity from them?
Okay, well, that was my reason, just on the savings end of it, not, otherwise I wouldn't have, asked the commission to consider that.
My understanding is that we still have until June 30th to approve the ordinance, and we have another meeting next week.
Well, we still want citizens to be able to review it, so
I agree.
maybe we should put something out on
Right.
the city's website to let citizens know about it.
I guess skipping ahead a little bit, does the presentation during resolution R-90-24, does that have any information about the software that we're purchasing, or any more justification for it?
Well, that was, so what I was going to say was a lot of what I said already in, explaining why we wanted the software. And then, I included the packet with, in the packet, the proposal so that you could see it. So.
Mayor, I might-
There'd be a lot to add to that.
You can't combine.
Well, I was just wondering if maybe we moved this one to after the presentation of R-90-24, or maybe
We can
invited.
move this up.
Or, yeah, why don't?
That second one up.
Okay,
but I want-
motion to mangle the agenda by moving the presentation for resolution R-90-24 to now, not necessarily the voting
To
part of it,
next.
but the
I
presentation,
I
so that
want-
we can,
I want public comment on this right
Okay.
now, and then we can move to hear that one
Ba-
next.
Yeah, basically what I want to do is be able to hear the presentation for 90-24 prior to voting on either of these.
That's fine.
You would not be able to, once this is closed, that's it for this
Well, I can put it
meeting.
on the table and pull it back off the table, right?
If you wish, you'll have to table it.
And I can untable it.
You can
Later.
remove it from the table.
Okay, yeah.
So, at this time, can we have public comment? Anybody want to talk about this?
Kim Heisler, 1802 West Parkway. Thank you, Frank, for bringing that up. It's a huge thing. My question is the differentiation between the 14,000 being moved over for the ordinance versus the 4,000 written on here. So there's still 14,000 being moved over, right?
That is
Yeah,
the,
Oh,
yeah.
sorry. Go ahead, Jared.
So the 14,000 is this year's subscription amount. So that covers the last half of the year's subscription for this. The 4,000 was on the implementation cost. There was a one-time implementation cost of 8,000, and they were willing to drop it to 4,000. First he offered 2,000, and I talked to him again, and he got him down another 2,000. So that was just on the implementation cost.
So with supposedly saving that amount of money, how much is it actually going to cost us?
Well, so this year, it's $14,000. Moving forward, the contract amount is $27,975 per year for the subscription.
Oh, because they're prorating this half of the year, right? Okay.
Because half year.
Gotcha.
And is
Or
that with,
proration and implementation.
Yeah, if we sign it before June 30th, it'd be 4,000 for the one-time implementation cost, and after that, the 8.
And they would have
And then
that.
also, he was willing to move the 4,000 implementation cost for this year to next year, so we can, include it in next year's appropriations.
okay, I just want to thank you guys for taking a look at that because it does seem rushed through. As a citizen, like Frank said, it does seem like it was like slid in there at the last minute without a whole lot of forethought. And I don't know much about that company, but it does seem like a lot of governmental municipalities or whatever, I guess we're all governmental type thing, but they also allow for a lot of communication amongst others to maybe help or maybe hide things within the software as well. So, I mean, if this extra time that you guys can kind of take a look at that, that would be great. But thank you.
So I'd like to respond to that. First of all, I've been in government for 34 years, and I've been in multiple jurisdictions and at the state level. And so software of this nature, just as I mentioned with OpenGov, it's about transparency. It's not about hiding things. And it's much easier to hide something in an Excel spreadsheet than if you're on the floor and asking questions about forecasting or modifying. I'll give you an example of one of the reasons we're very excited is we have to negotiate our union contracts. And so our personnel costs are 80% of our budget or upwards of 80% depending on the department. So to be able to go in there and say, what is a 2% or 3% COLA on the impact of the budget, and to be able to demonstrate that in real time is very valuable. Again, the only reason that we're even bringing this as an emergency is to get the savings. It's not to hurry it through, and I would say hurrying it through is not a correct statement. Jerry has been in local government for many years and worked different places and worked at the state level for the auditor's office, and we have a high degree of compliance thanks to him. And so, again, it's trying to increase our transparency, not use governmental software to, diminish that.
I just want to reiterate again that I think what your plans are for the budget, what you've done so far, what your plans are in the future, all great. Again, increasing the transparency, being able to answer those questions about, what is the marginal revenue on this particular street sweeper or whatever, things like that. you know, if this is what you guys think is going to be able to do that, again, I know what your intention is, and I believe you that, and the issue isn't whether or not this is the right software or not. The issue is just the presentation of it.
Right.
I would then also ask you would this have fallen under your threshold for having even presented this to us? Could you have entered into this contract without even presenting it to us?
The expenditure was 73,988, so it was under the 75,000. Again, Jerry and I have been working together to talk about whether it's this contract or other contracts that are beneficial. And again, demonstrating our ability to increase our transparency to the public or accountability, either one. That's why we brought this.
Is
And-
that was what your intention was?
Correct.
Okay.
So I need a motion of some sort.
Would the city be amenable to moving to, I guess this being the first reading, the second reading being at the special meeting next week? That would still put us ahead of the 30th.
Yes, very agreeable. Yeah.
Okay. Commissioners,
Move to table?
well, I guess we would just move on. We
Yeah,
just-
it's just the first reading.
Yeah, whatever we need to, if we need to make any motions to add that to the agenda for next week, let's make
Right.
sure that
Yeah.
that shows up on the agenda, but.
There's several items for the special meeting next week, so we'll just add that to the agenda next
Right.
week.
Sure.
Okay.
Alrighty.
All right, moving on. Next to ordinance number O-11-24, first reading.
An ordinance permitting the commission to remove appointed representatives from boards created by the commission.
So this is brought up because there was questions that were raised. Could we or could board members be removed, and what would the process be? And there is really none in place in our ordinances. Chapter 32 does have some ordinances that calls for the removal of members, but it doesn't have a procedure.
I was reading through the PDF, and the thing that was primarily of concern to me, and I thank you, Mr. Law Director, for pointing out that there are things within in our charter to give cause, but we don't have process. But this gives us process, but it also does not list any causality whatsoever. So basically, the way this reads, if 3 members of the commission decide they don't like somebody, it doesn't matter if they did something, didn't matter if they didn't do something, all they have to, nope, we don't want them on there anymore. All right, well, 3-2, it's done, and they're gone. And that absolutely flies in the face of transparency and any fairness to the people who are volunteers. I mean, none of our people that are on these commissions or committees, they don't get paid for that. So I would think we would give them a little bit more respect than that. That's just me.
I would respond to that by saying that any decision that the commission makes, we are always at the possibility of a rogue 3-2 vote. But as always, I mean, as opposed to what you had said about lack of transparency, that would have to be a vote in the public that would be transparent, and we would then be accountable to the citizens, which is why we do these meetings in public. So I hear your concern about not having specific cause, though it is listed elsewhere. And then I would spend a lot of time on the Ohio ohio.ethics.gov today, and the Ohio Revised Codes and the ethics guidelines provide for a lot of cause reasons. And then I'll just restate, as with any decision the commission makes, we are always, we have to answer to the people. If you guys think that we made a bad decision, there's multiple avenues by which you can counter us for that.
Do you have a process that you would come up with in place? Because right now, there's no process whatsoever.
Well, the thing is, this does do the process.
All right,
But let's take the process and marry it up with what's already in there as far as causality goes. Just at least mention what's in there. You know, have a section in there, or have it spell out that these are, the causes for dismissal could be related, might be related to and then just spell out what's in the other ordinance and list it out, and just even call out the other ordinance.
Mr. Patrizio, might we, on a second or third reading, have some kind of amendment that references Ohio State ethics guidelines or references other parts of the charter that may provide for some of those causes?
Charter's probably not going to do it. I can try and come up with some causes and see if it's acceptable to you folks. for our
Yeah,
next
I
meeting.
mean, I would be.
I know that when we ran into this issue or discussion when we had one of the ones that we found where there was no path for removal was the planning commission.
And I may, they are appointed by the commission. I have to review that. There's some conflicting things in the ordinance that would indicate you may be able to, but I have to make sure that that's correct in the charter.
For the other boards, do they list any process?
The only one
Yeah.
that I know is the fire committee.
No, we've got one for the historic committee, 'cause we
Yeah,
included that in
we-
the historic committee as
Yeah,
well.
and that one as well.
So it is, when Commissioner Simmons referred to that there being somewhere in the charter cause for removal.
We can look at various causes. I can put something together.
Is
There's
there
nothing in the
cause?
charter itself for the committees. There is for commissioners.
But not for any members of the committee.
That's correct.
So let's just, for maybe a hypothetical. So someone who is serving on the planning commission or the park committee could be not only arrested but convicted of a crime.
That's correct.
And still be eligible to serve on said committee.
That's
with the
correct.
way this is.
I have I represent a company that's a nonprofit that has various rules for people being removed from a committee. I may look at that and see if I can meld it into this ordinance. And I think that would be something that would make everybody happy.
Yes, I do think that there needs to be some type of guidelines here as far, or actions, something that would cause for that consideration.
With crime, would you want to limit it to felonies, misdemeanors?
I mean, I wouldn't even want to go that aggressive. I share Mr. Simmons' concern that it's possible that this could be used, let's call it frivolously and excessively. I also worry on the flip side that it may just never be used because we'll create in our head our own set of guidelines that there's such a high threshold that needs to be met. We'll just never actually utilize this power, even though a situation may well call for it. So I don't know that the burden needs to be something as high as a felony, but I don't know, there could be, again, like I said, maybe making references to the ethics guidelines at the state of Ohio.
I would draft it as to these things will certainly trigger this, right?
But not limited to.
But not limited to, and to address the concern of with Commissioner Simmons, where if there's someone sitting up here eating beer nuts during the planning commission and that ticks 3 of us off, and then the next time we come up here and 3 of us vote to remove that person because we don't like what they're doing,
Just bring a sign
technically.
that- Bring a sign that says no beer nuts.
Yeah, I mean, technically, under how this is, this is drafted, that would be a hypothetical that could happen.
And I
The way it's
do,
drafted gives you very broad discretion. I can narrow that discretion.
Thank you, sir.
and
No
Mr.
beer nuts, okay.
Mr. Simmons, Commissioner Simmons, I'd be interested to hear you respond to this, but I almost do want, I think it's fine to have a just for no cause. Let's look at a scenario where, for instance, the planning commission adopts something that creates a gravel quarry off the side of the city, and then a whole new commission gets elected, and the brand-new commission has no reason to recall the planning commissioners but for their vote for that. I mean, I think that it would be incumbent on the commission and the citizens that elected them to be able to have the power to do such a thing, which may be seen as frivolous or may have an overlap with a similar scenario that might be frivolous, but is a needed power. I mean, what would you think of that?
I don't know. The commission, they have a term limit, they have term expires, right? And so, if the planning commission and the other committees don't have like an expiring term.
They do. They do.
Yeah, then I would say, yep, you're absolutely right. But if they've got an expiring term, you can let them sunset. The other thing that I would add into this, and I might get in trouble, sorry for doing so, is that, and I've said it before, these guys, these are all, whether or not we agree with all of them all the time, they're our bosses. And so if there is if there's a committee person or board person who is not fulfilling their obligations in the eyes of the citizens, I think we should have, and yes, you're gonna tell me I'm opening a big can of worms, I'm sorry. We should have something in there where the citizens have a right of petition to bring to us and say, hey, we want to have this person removed from the board or from this committee for the following reasons. And as long as the petitions are signed by, I don't know, however many, 200, 500 people.
They have that ability, well, if we do this and
bringing it
allow
to
it, the
Right.
option or the vote to removal, there's nothing that prevents them from coming to us and saying, hey, so-and-so's doing a terrible job.
Right.
And you should vote to remove them. I mean, I don't think we need to statutorily.
But if you got
put
one
that
or
in.
two people saying that, that's one thing. If you have a petition with like a couple hundred signatures, that's something to reckon with.
Well, and again, that would be something that might be compelling for us
Right.
to look into, but I would worry that risks turning those appointed positions into pseudo-elected positions when really the committees are kind of an exercise of this commission being a Republican form of government where we're appointed representatives. It's not direct democracy to those committee positions. And to a certain extent, I mean, I don't want to say that the appointments are arbitrary, but we have the legal definition of arbitration on appointing those. We don't have to have a specific reason for appointing them. And I don't know, I'm thinking through whether or not we need to have, or what the guidelines should be on a specific reason to remove them. I feel like it's at our leisure, or at least that's how I've read it. Things like the Planning Commission that have some nesting in state law might get a little.
The charter would control on the removal of the planning commission. I have to review that section. There's some indication in the ordinance that you would be able to remove them, but I'm not sure that the charter would trump the ordinance.
The committees, a lot of them, I mean, a lot
committee-
of them are relatively new. I mean, within like 5 years or so, are they not? I
Some
mean,
of them are not, committees that have a lot of authority, or, you have the
Yeah.
park committee, you have utility committee, which are more advisory type committees. The committees that are significant are the BZA and the Planning Commission, and those are specifically designed not to be political. And that's so, somebody makes a decision, all of a sudden somebody comes up and says, well, I have 200 signatures because they didn't do their job right. No, they probably did their job right. You don't like the decision. And we want to keep that out of it. I agree with that.
It's somewhat, I can see a counter argument being somewhat like the Supreme Court, where you don't want them to be easily recalled. You want to just stick them in there, and whatever decision they make it without fear of reprisal. I can see the benefit to that. Though, as I said too, you may see a situation where you have a large changeover in the commission due to public sentiment, and that public sentiment may or may not be related to particular boards and initiatives that they're running with.
Yeah, I mean, to dumb this thing down a little bit, we have the ability and the authority to appoint to these committees. I do believe that should we or should our whomever comes after us think that we made some drastic mistakes, should have the ability to remove. I do like the idea of referencing what would Ohio ethics as possible reasons to trigger that. But other than that, I mean, that's my biggest concern.
I would like to hear from citizens if anybody has a comment about this ordinance.
Valerie Mulligan. as the director of a nonprofit organization, thank you, Frank, for saying that you would like to refer to that nonprofit, because what I'm hearing, and I haven't seen your committee documents, your committee contracts for those people who serve on your committees, but you should have an attendance policy. You should have an integrity policy, an ethics policy. You should have term limits. You should have a set number of people on your board. And your term limits for those people need to alternate so that, if you've got 10 people on your board, 2 people are going off this year, 2 people off next year, et cetera, so you have a rotation. And then you should set a removal standard for disorderly behavior. If you've got somebody on your parks board that has gotten a felony with a sex offense and they're on probation, they should not be on your park board. So I beg to differ on if they have a felony to not use that against them. But there's got to be an ounce of common sense. And I think if you follow a nonprofit model, I think you will come up with your solution.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
At this point, we're having, first reading?
Yeah, but do you have any other comments?
Nothing that's not just a reiteration of,
You had something else.
no, I'll say that for my commissioner's comments.
Okay.
It's
No,
not
we're
related to
having-
this.
We're having first reading, and the second reading will have some amendments.
We will
Coming
have
back to
something,
us
yes.
for
Frank will have
consideration.
some additional.
I'll try my wordsmithing and see.
Don't forget. All right, first reading. Next on the agenda is resolution number R-89-24.
A resolution accepting for statutory purposes a budget for the calendar year 2025.
Mayor and Commissioners, this resolution brings forth a document that is required by the state and the county to be on file. It's basically a first draft of our budget that we'll work on later in the season and bring to commission to, for your consideration and approval. So that process will begin, a couple months down the road in earnest. But this first draft we have to have on file with the county as part of the legal requirements to begin that process.
Okay, any questions from commissioners?
No.
Any questions from citizens? I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to adopt resolution R-89-24.
Second. Beat him.
Let Frank have it. He said it.
He can have the next one.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
My apologies to
Carries. That's
Commissioner
all right.
DeBrus.
No, that's all right. Next is resolution number R-90-24.
A resolution authorizing the city manager to sign a contract with the company ClearGov for a budgeting software program.
Mayor and Commissioners, this is the resolution that I spoke of earlier about the budgeting software. So, bringing this forth, for your consideration if you have any more questions tonight about it.
I believe that we would, obviously pending more discussion about this, I believe the ultimate fate of this tonight would be to be tabled until the special meeting next week, so that can be voted on after the other ordinance is voted on.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I'd ask that you, when you do your motion for table, you move to table it to next Tuesday at the time of the meeting.
I will.
Thank you.
Effort to do so.
Any other comments from commissioners? Comments from citizens?
All right, Mayor,
Entertain a motion.
I motion that we table resolution R-90-24 until the special meeting next Tuesday.
I second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor of tabling this until next
Tuesday.
Tuesday, what time is that special?
Oh, you wanted it.
Yes, yeah, you guys wanted it.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock, 5 o'clock. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? tabled. Next on the agenda would be resolution number R-91-24.
A resolution regarding the applied for liquor permit for Ormond Estate LLC at 1612 South Main Street, Piqua, Ohio, 45356.
This is a resolution that authorizes the Ormond Estate to get a D2 license, that we have no objections to it, and that would allow Ormond to sell wine and prepackaged low-proof mixed beverages sales on and off premises until 1 a.m. The staff, or the city administration, had no objections to it.
And this is not the liquor permit that they had at Scottish. This is a new one. Any questions from commissioners?
You said on and off premises? What is off premises?
That means they can sell it to take home. So if
Doors.
somebody was there and they wanted to, they would have to have it in a box or like a
road
wine
soda?
box or a wine bottle, they could sell it off and sell it so they can take it off premise.
And you said the administration is in favor, or has no issues?
We had no objections to it.
Oh, I just saw it here. And the chief, who I was going to ask, I saw your check mark. You're good.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
You're good, I'm good. All right.
Any questions from citizens? I'll entertain a motion.
Motion that we adopt resolution R-91-24.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Yeah. I lost my agenda. All right. So we are now at the city manager's report.
Mayor and Commissioners, I'd just like to remind everybody that our refuse folks are going to be starting an hour early due to the excessive heat this week, and so please be timely in getting your refuse out to the curb when they pick it up, because it'll be starting at 6 a.m. And then the second part of my report will be based on the alert that was sent out today on the spoofing, and I'll defer to the chief to speak to it.
Yeah, so today we did a media release and we posted on the police department and the city's social media accounts of a couple complaints that we've received in the last 2 days of spoofing incidences where people are using apps to change their caller ID to disguise who the caller actually is. This is a pretty common scam that's been going on for a number of years, where people will generally get a call stating that they have a warrant for their arrest or they have fines that have been levied against them. And then they put some pressure on that individual with a sense of urgency to either provide them with Bitcoin funds or gift cards, a number of other things that they'll request. And if you don't comply with them, then they will tell you that they're going to come arrest you, or they're going to come to your place of employment and arrest you. And they do, obviously with social media and websites, there's a lot of information available. The last 2 days, the calls we've received, they've spoofed the Piqua Police Department's 2027 number, and they've actually identified themselves as current members of the department with proper positions. So where they're getting that, I mean, it's out there. But so these calls come in, they're not legitimate. The police department will never call you to tell you you have a warrant. The police department's never going to call you and tell you, hey, you need to provide funds to satisfy fines or to prevent going to jail. But nonetheless, these calls come in, and they've come in recently. And so we did put a memo out today to let the public know that this has occurred very recently. And there is at least one person who paid part of this fee. And their common practices is once they get one payment from you, suddenly there's a second charge, or there's an additional thing that they located and you have to send them more. And they're going to continue doing this until you realize that it's fraud. So again, we put it out there today. in every manner we could to alert the public that our number is being used and the officers' names are being mentioned and that it is fraud, that we would never do anything like that and don't have that ability. These spoofing calls, they can use anyone's number, so if they have your public number or private number, they could use that as well. These apps that they use, a lot of times they're not even in the United States, but they're very difficult, if possible at all, to trace who that caller is. So you have to use caution, and the advice that we gave in the release is if you receive a suspicious phone call or a suspicious voicemail from anyone identifying themselves as being an officer or from a specific police department, that you can call the Miami County Communications Center in the non-emergency number 937-440-9911, and you can request to speak to that department or that officer directly to confirm whether or not it was actually them calling. So you don't have to call these individuals, because a lot of times it'll look like it came from the police department, but if they leave you a message, they'll tell you to call back a different number. And I wouldn't call that number. I would call the dispatch center, speak to them directly, and then get in direct contact with the police department or go to the police department to confirm whether or not an officer's actually calling you. And again, that could be if they're calling you because they say they got a complaint, it's okay to do that. But in these particular cases, they're asking for money, or they're telling you you're going to jail, or you've got fines. And in those cases, again, there's no police department ever going to do that. So that should be, put you on high alert that this is fraud. So just letting you know.
Thank you very much. That's good information. Appreciate it. All right. Next would be commissioners' comments, and we will start with Commissioner Simmons.
Well, hey, everybody. So, let's see, four things really quick. I got a call today from Mr. Kinder, and city came out and worked on his alleyway, and they're just about done with finishing touches, and he was absolutely ecstatic, and he asked me to pass along his thanks to everyone here. Let's see, secondly, my darling wife Jo is watching. Hey, honey, I will talk to you soon. Third thing is this Saturday is the Amateur Radio Relay League Field Day. So if you guys have ever wanted to use an amateur radio, ham radio, and you don't have a license, you can go down to just the south end of the county fairgrounds, and at 1 o'clock we're going to start having a radio contest on there, and you can go out there and get on the radio and just have lots of fun. And Chief Byron, every time I get one of those crank phone calls like that, I always just go, "Come get me," and I hang up. So if I do that and it really is you guys, call me back and let me know.
I was gonna say, you are the one making those calls. Probably. That's pretty funny, but thank you. Oh, gosh. Commissioner Vetter, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'll be short tonight. A couple things on the agenda. Number one, the next meeting for the Hants Pavilion Committee will be next Thursday, the 20th, 7:30 this time. And the reason is that several of us are participating in the Juneteenth program.
Which I'll talk about.
And we'll let you talk about that, but we moved the meeting back 30 minutes just to give everybody a chance to do that. So that'll be at the Activities Center for the YMCA. So 7:30. Thank you.
All right. Commissioner DeBras.
I just want to take a minute and thank the folks who came and presented at the town hall meeting last week, and kind of jumping back to a conversation we had during the work session. I believe those would have qualified as presentations, and so that may be something to where we look at, instead of doing it at the actual commission meeting, we have that type of format to do those presentations. They did, with the Piqua Center doing the 4th of July activities and the Arts Council's programs and the library programs that we're doing over the summer for not just kids but for adults as well. However, I did not get my question answered as to whether Audible books count or not, but
I don't think that they do, and I think I would beat you.
Cheater.
that may be a bridge too far for them. With that, thank you. I just, as the temperatures continue to get hot out there, stay safe. Paul, go easy on our folks out there over the next week. I know refuse is going early, but make sure they're taking care of themselves and
Hydrating.
with that, I'll yield back.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Homan.
No comment tonight.
Okay. Wasn't expecting that, but okay. All right, so my comments is the city manager, please do look after our sanitation workers. And I'm glad that they're going early so that they can get done early, so it's cooler for them. The streets, parks, and the rest of the departments, make sure they hydrate, stay cool, find shade if they can. And not just this, I guess it's supposed to be through next Tuesday, all in the 90s. It was 95 today in certain parts of Dayton where I was at, so please be careful of that. Thursday is our Juneteenth presentation for the city of Piqua, the diversity committee, in conjunction with your group, which is the
Gotham City Brass Quintet.
Gotham City
Brass Quintet.
Brass Quintet will be performing. Jim Oda will give a presentation about Juneteenth and an overview of the history of it. And the Gotham City Brass Quintet will have several selections of music that they will be playing. Some Mills Brothers, all very appropriate for the event. And although Juneteenth is tomorrow, and it is the holiday, we're having it on the third Thursday because they're going extra, and we'll have more people down there, and we've got that going on. Also, Thursday I will be at the Piqua Public Library at 4:30 before the Juneteenth event, which starts at 5:30, talking about Piqua history and my history and anything relevant to the Randolph Freed people, as I'm one of the descendants.
Did you mention tomorrow, Kansas?
Yes, that was the last thing, and very good. We normally on Wednesdays from 4 to 6, we have the mayor's meeting, mayors and commissioners meeting, because several commissioners do pop in and out of those meetings. That will be canceled because it is a holiday and the building will be closed, correct? So, I mean, we've been pretty good about being here every week, so this will be the first one I miss, which means I also don't have to work and I get to sleep in a little bit, so. So I'm very happy. And with that said, that's all I have. Just stay cool and hydrated, and watch it out there. The temperature is hot. And with that said, we're moving on to public comment. This is an opportunity for citizens to address the city commission on agenda items. Comments or requests to be limited to 5 minutes.
Kim Heisler, 1802 West Parkway. Tom, you had mentioned earlier that the citizens have like multiple avenues to make changes of stuff that you did. What are those multiple avenues?
There is a process for recalling us. There is the forum that you're using right now to speak to us. We all also have our emails, and I think our cell phones are available on the website, where you can call us directly or meet with us directly. You can get involved on various committees that we have delegated some measure of power to help shape some city policy. And also you have the ability at the end of each of our terms to decide whether or not you would like to continue on with our representation.
That was good. I didn't expect so many different.
I didn't expect myself to be able to come up with that many either.
That was good. So my question though is still regarding, and you guys have you're doing a good job. You're pointing out stuff that seems kind of obvious and bring that up to our attention. But in the past too, I haven't paid much attention to sitting meetings, and then for some reason I got involved. I think it started with a battery burn, like a lot of citizens. Because if we just sit back, it gets us nowhere. So I want to try to help us move forward, not sideways, not backwards, but forward. So I hope that, some of the stuff that I say that is, taken as all good and moving forward. And to you guys, the commissioners, and you probably, this, as a city officials, you guys took an oath to be our voice for the health and the future of our city. And I thank you guys for that, because it's it's great to do and a great responsibility also. So know that you're actually representing 20,000 of us, and you're only 5 of the 20,000. So things shouldn't be taken lightly. When things want to get rushed through, take more time, and I appreciate you mentioned that earlier. Also, on the flow chart, it has the citizens of Piqua at the very top, that we have a voice, yet we still only have a commission of 5 who decides for us. So if we as citizens want to oppose or change an ordinance, and I know you said there's other avenues, but if we actually want to make change, we have to gather up to 1,200 registered voters or signatures to even bring it up as an option to make a change. 1,200 of us versus only 5 to maybe 8 of you, including the city manager. That seems like it's just crazy to me. And consider this, if we were actually playing basketball and it was the citizens of Piqua versus the city commission, for every 2 points we make, every basket, the citizens would only make 2 points. The commission would make 162 points. So to me, that is such an uneven.
But you vote for us to be up here. I'm not getting that.
I know it might feel like that if we
do.
maybe don't make the decision that you wanted, but I would like to think that we're on the same team.
Yes.
Well, we are on the same team, yet at the same time, if there's been stuff that's been brought up in the commission meeting where certain ordinances or whatever, and we've had a lot of people oppose compared to the people that spoke up for it.
So
And
a
with
lot,
more opposition, and still things were pushed forward without being tabled or taking a longer amount of time.
what's a lot? Because that's all relative to the people that are here that night. And
Right,
so
it
maybe we
is
hear more
relative.
people, maybe we hear from just more than a lot that night, and we hear from other people who call us, who email us, who come to our house. We get all that. We do get all that.
Right, but if we have 8 people opposed and we only have 20 people out here and 5 people for, that's,
That's just here. That's what I'm saying. It's relative to who's here that night.
okay. It just seems like as citizens that we're not actually being,
That sounds kind of like the similar
Heard,
problem where there's
dismissed
only 5
sometimes.
commissioners, but if there's only 8
30
people-
seconds.
yeah, okay, well,
But you are being heard because Commissioner DeBras actually did
Yeah.
something that,
on his own, and that's great. That's what we want, you guys to step forward and
and
stuff,
we
so
do.
that we don't have to
On
bring it.
other
So
items
that's-
as well.
All right, well, keep it up then. It just seems like it's like pulling teeth sometimes to be able to be heard.
We're not always gonna
and-
agree on everything.
I
We're not
know.
always gonna do everything
I
that you
know,
want us to
but
do.
getting 1,200 votes.
Time expired.
And I wanted to wait until you were done talking. You can stay there for a
You can
second.
stay,
I wanted to
yeah,
wait.
stay.
I wanted to respond to something, but I didn't want to interrupt you or like suck up some of your time. But you actually have had a pretty decent impact on this. Mr. DeRoss was able to put forward an amendment on the insurance thing last time or a couple weeks ago, and I know you were a big push for that. It took some getting going, but before it was passed, Commissioner DeBras added that amendment that reduced that amount. We added some other amendments based off your input and some other input of other citizens. And then I also want to point out, you in particular very much helped me in some of your comments when I was writing the fire ordinance. So one of the things that the burning ordinance that I wrote includes is a whole section listing out every single category of hazardous material. And that whole section came from a comment that you had made about, well, what about burning different hazardous materials? And I thought, well, that's a good point. And so I did take that feedback, and that helped shape. So the format that you're using right now with the public comment, that's one of the reasons why I speak so forcefully to maintain its current format, is because I do find it to be useful, and you have been able to use that as a mechanism to try to drive some change, and it's worked.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was just kind of hoping to speak for other people that's not wanting to come up or able to come up. Can I have like 2 more minutes?
One more, but go ahead.
One more, okay, so real quick, I think it was 0-7-24, which was the appropriations to hire the level, the 2,500 to 75,000. I know that's already a done deal, whatever, but my question, and I should have spoke up earlier when you guys.
They capped it at 25, by the way, not
25.
Right, you capped it at that with a max of 200,000. My question was gonna be, though, we need to make sure that the software that we're getting, even though it's gonna be easier and transparent, that we do go back a ways, because having a cap of 200,000 and being able to track that is exactly what we need. Because like right now, I've made a public records request and gotten back to me that, Kim, there's so much paperwork to go through, we don't really,
On what? Public records?
like, we have a cap of
I
two
can
hundred
address,
thousand.
I can address a little bit. She asked for a list of settlements over the last 10 years. We don't have that list. And the public records request, public records law does not require the city to provide something it does not have. So we don't have a list of all the settlements over the last 10 years. Now, they are in probably accounts payable somewhere, and she would have to go through all that. We can make those accounts payable available, and she could go through all those accounts payable and find it. But the city does not have a list, and that's what she's discussing.
But my point is, though, if you're gonna cap at 200,000, you need to be able to know how much you've spent.
Yeah, so
We can
That's the
ask
point
to
I'm getting
generate a
to.
list. Is that what you would like? Us generate a list of those
all of
payments?
those
Well,
kinds
yeah, I
of
mean, it's
controls.
kind of
So
a
I-
past point, but if you're gonna put a limit, know that you can actually track it
Track it.
to that limit and
Yeah,
not,
so
So the
a
software
lot of
needs-
those
I agree with that.
concerns where we're talking about trying to hyper-analyze particular financial movements, that's going to be made a lot easier by different initiatives that Mr. Oberdorfer and his team have been making, and by different software packages that they're trying to use to help that. On kind of the way that you're looking at it, I'm not meaning to be, I guess, pessimistic about it, but you're presenting kind of a glass half empty approach where, well, we need this transparency because we got to make sure that nothing bad's happening. Where I'm actually kind of excited about it because I'm looking at it as glass half full. Now I've got all this transparency. Now I can ask questions
Yeah,
that
now we can-
drive
right.
beneficial decision making to make everything more efficient. So, I mean, it's kind of the same thing, but I think that this is going to end up being a good thing, and that transparency that you're looking for, the same questions that you have because you want to watchdog stuff, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Those same kind of questions, I want to ask different efficiency questions. Okay, well, where are we spending our dollars here? What's the margin of return on this? And we're going to be able to answer those questions both from a watchdog perspective and from a business management perspective now, which again is only because of the initiatives that Mr. Oberdorfer and his team have been
right,
going through.
and that's great. It'd be nice to be able to go back at least a year or two to be able to put stuff in there so that we have a track record going forward as opposed to
Well, we will,
working backwards.
we'll
So,
ask for that.
Thank you for the extra time.
Thank you.
Eva Silvers, 319 Third. So I just have a couple things. Our Parks Department, when we went and did the cleanup, the bike path area, there have been some questions about the trails in there. Byron, you may be able to speak to this. The bike trails, the old bike trails on Wood Street, back between.
Private
where I'm at.
property.
It is private property? Oh, we went in and cleaned it up.
Excuse me?
We went in and cleaned it up. Not the small section of woods, but the actual set of woods, like behind.
Where like the bike BMX thing is that you're talking.
Anything off the bike path is it's private property.
Okay, do we know who owns that? We don't. Okay, and the only other thing that I have,
You know?
Yeah, that property's owned by Wood Street Loft, so St. Mary's Group.
so where we cleaned up it is?
Correct.
Okay, just some people wanting to know if they can have access to use the trails. So that would be who they'd have to
That's who they have
contact.
to contact.
The only other thing I have is we were talking about the parks earlier. And I just basically want to tell the community, if you see something, say something. We talked about this.
Yes.
We have Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is a lovely park. A lot of kids play there. Unfortunately, there were a lot of smoke bombs let off in one of the play areas.
Did hear about that,
Yeah, so we have a lot of equipment, and if our kids are going to utilize it, it's summer. So if you're out and you see something like that as a community member, just speak out because, I mean, it's your tax dollars that are going to have to pay to repair it or replace it. So, and if you're at the park and you see a child, you know, call law. If you see somebody doing anything to any of the park equipment, because there's a multitude of kids that utilize it, say something. That way we can keep our parks the way we need to keep them. We already have a
Totally
park
agree.
deficit, so let's try to get community attention on our parks when we're there.
Thank you very much. Oh, I did want to, I forgot during my public thing, wanted to thank Jim Sheets and all the presenters as well for the town hall. And he can come back anytime he would like, because he did a good job putting things in perspective. Go right ahead.
Valerie Mulliken. I live on Piqua Clayton, have a business here at 97 East Ash Street. I have a couple questions. I've been asking this for a long time, and I still see absolutely zero movement. When are we going to have handicap accessible parking in Piqua? And when are we going to have handicap accessibility to the picnic shelter that is less than 10 years old at Pittsburgh Park and is currently not ADA compliant?
So I can't speak to the shelter yet because that would be a capital project that's going to be programmed and probably go before the Parks Board for consideration. But as the parking plan goes, they've been finalizing, doing the survey, they've been doing aerial surveys. So there's a lot of work that goes behind putting that together. And as part of the downtown parking plan, we have improvements that are going to be proposed over the next, I would say, the next 6 to 9 months that include input from the public in regards to improvements downtown to the quads, as well as what's been considered artisan alley and things of that nature. So parking is a big component of that. It's a big concern of the public. In terms of the being addressed, the downtown ADA parking is adequate from what we've seen. So there's, and I know you don't agree with the crooked handle, but it did meet the ADA requirements, and the permit was approved by the county.
So the handicap accessible parking in downtown Piqua is not sufficient. It is not sufficient in any of your parks at all. It does none of this. None of the city of Piqua is compliant by the federal ADA laws. And Mr. Oberdorfer, I appreciate that the city of Piqua Parks and the city of Piqua is looking at and doing all of these aerial views and trying to get input and so forth. It has been 6 months since I come to this commission that I have been saying this over and over and over again. It literally is a matter of painting parking, even if it's temporary, in each of your quads until you get the restructuring done. It is literally painting a parking space. You should have a general handicap accessible parking space, and you should have a van parking space in every one of your quads, in every one of your public parking lots, and in every one of your parks in this community. We do not have adequate parking assigned for handicap accessibility. And I have to tell you that you have a park shelter that was built, and it was not built correctly. And I have not been up to look at the Moat Park shelters yet, but I am going to be going there. If you do not have handicap accessibility to that, you might be part of your capital improvement, but you have to shut that shelter down at Pittsburgh until it is accessible. Do you understand that?
Oh, trust me.
That's federal law.
I understand the federal law, and I understand the ADA transition plan. I don't think what you're clear on is that the parking that was put in ADA, it was ADA compliant at the time of construction. So when you talk about the quads or the parks, when those parks received an improvement that it was in excess of $50,000, the ADA was addressed with the current standards. With the
Not
standards that you're
Pittsburgher.
speaking- The standards you are speaking about are standards that have occurred in a period past the time that they've made an improvement over $50,000.
The Pittsburgher picnic shelter is less than 10 years old. It has never met compliance for handicap accessibility. There's not a ramp, and there's not a paved path to get to that picnic shelter.
I can certainly look into that one, but as for the rest of the parks and the downtown, things have been compliant and ADA changes over time. Commissioner Simmons brought up the fact that there was a gentleman that had an issue with a crosswalk. That was a truncated cones, and over the last 10 years, they've changed that standard to eliminate that issue. They've created new issues while they've been doing that. But when the city's responsibility is at the time the ADA improvement is made, it meets that requirement. And until we come back
30
and
seconds.
touch it again, we're not obligated to go back and redo ADA to today's standards. I will certainly look into the shelters, but I don't think the rest of the public would approve or appreciate having shelters closed until we can get that amenity fixed.
If it's not compliant, it has to be closed until it becomes compliant. And I don't want it shut either because we use it. The other thing I would like to remind the community of is July the 4th, we have the Piqua Fest out at the
Time
Piqua
expired.
Center.
Keep going, just finish.
That begins at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and it runs until 8 p.m., and then following, or starting at 8 p.m., they have some additional celebrations, and the city of Piqua is providing fireworks that will be launched over at Hollow Park. So we invite the community to come out and join us.
All righty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Melanie Walker on North Wayne Street. I just wanted to remind everyone that Saturday is Rock Piqua, sponsored by the Piqua Arts Council
Thanks.
and Main Street Organization. They'll have the car show going on and bands on 2 different stages. So there's a lot happening, and it's always a wonderful event. So take your time and go out and see it.
I will.
Make sure you take lots of water, though.
Yes, thank you. No one else? I'll entertain a
To
motion.
adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned.
So I forwarded on to